Today's painting we're going to do is this abstract. From the previous videos we discussed compositions. This one is an example of one-third row. Canvas is split into three in both directions, and where they intersect is where the point of interest your eye will go to. As I said before, you can have more than one point of interest. Here I've got two, and I've got used bridges to connect the two of them. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. I hope you have fun today. We did discuss texture in the canvas, so I've already completed the texture, had it dry for a couple of days before we get started. So let's get painting. Hello and welcome to my studio here in Orlando. My name is Gabrielle Gosselin. I've been painting for over 40 years. I'm self-taught. Today I'm here to teach you how to do a step-by-step abstract for your home. This one is very big. It's 36 by 48. The video before this, I showed you how to texture your canvas before painting with paste. I left it to dry for a couple of days. I put a little tint on the back of the canvas to see if you can see it better when I go to start painting. Right now what we're going to do is the first coat. We're going to do it as light as possible. I'm going to start with the ochre and some yellow, and what that helps you is it's easier to go from a lighter colour to a darker colour for your top layers. So let's get started. Unwind, take your shoes off, take a deep breath, and let's get painting. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to wet down the canvas. This is a must for acrylic paintings, just basically a spray bottle with water in it. Come quite far away, just a mist. So what you want to do is you want to try and keep the paint a little bit wet, for acrylics dry very fast. That gives you a couple of more minutes more to make up your mind if you want to keep something or leave it. I'm going to wet it down a little bit more with some gesso. This is a good base gesso, and then if you ever want to cover up something that you don't like, gesso is a way to go. It's a little bit cheaper than your regular white paint. Now I know it's hard for you to see it because it's sort of white on white, but just a fine coat of gesso on this. Every time you put a coat of paint on a painting, it becomes smoother. Now to know if your canvas is wet, you can see it shimmering in the light. You can see the bits that you've missed. Now at this point you can go and have a cup of tea and let this dry. Or you can use a hairdryer or a fan. What this also does is it helps you relax, gives you nice big movements. Don't need to worry about if it's smooth or it's thicker texture one place or another. All you're trying to do is get loose. Now you can paint wet and wet at this point if you want. You can experiment with it. You might have more control if it's wet. It's still very shiny. I'm going to attempt to put the ochre on top to see what happens. Wash my brush. Dry it off a little bit. Now it doesn't matter where you start, just get the paint on. Now it's still a little bit wet. I think I prefer to do this when it's dry. Because you're losing the strength of the ochre. But once it's dry, I'll put stronger pieces on. With art, you can never make any mistakes. They're always fixable. Or you go with them and you go a different direction. Now abstract paintings, it does take a lot of paint. This is a basic latex I use, and it's the ochre. You can buy it in a bigger container because you will use a lot of this. This color is a neutral color, so it can blend with anything. And what I'm trying to do is have different strengths of paint. I know you can't see this from the camera, but this texture is now starting to show up. Sometimes the canvas moves. I need to keep checking it to see if it's level. At this point it doesn't really matter, but once you get into making lines, it will. Now if you've got texture, try and go with the lines of the texture. And spray it down a little bit, starting to get too dry. Usually you can tell when it's getting too dry that you can hear the brush strokes more. And it's harder to pull it through. Now this is mixing a little bit with the wet paint underneath. And remember when you're doing the abstract to do the corners and the sides before you finish with your brush. Every layer you do an abstract, remember to do the sides. Because when you go back it's very hard to remember which color comes first. So this is your first coat. We have like this dark bit here. We put a bit more dark on it. Anyway, I was trying to show you the difference between a brush stroke and a brush mark. A brush mark is when you see the line of the brush, whereas a brush stroke is when you see the whole thing. Like you can see the lines in the brush. But if you just see a mark, that is a brush mark. Usually you see it when you're painting oils. You'll see that you leave this mark when you use a brush and you have to smooth it out. Well, that's a brush mark. A lot of people think that's art, but you have to do a brush stroke, which is you see the lines of the hair, but you don't see these marks that the brush makes. Anytime I think of something, I'm going to tell you. There's a lot of stuff in art you have to learn. But be kind to yourself, because every time you do a paint you learn something new. Now these tutorials, have a little notepad beside you, and then when I tell you something, write it down, and then you'll have a collection of things that you know about art. Well, this time I'm going to have to let it dry. So I'm going to say goodbye to you right now. I'm going to go for a cup of tea, take the paint off my feet, and I'll be back in 10-15 minutes. The canvas is now dried. What we're going on to the next step is the design part of it, the composition. This one is going to be the third rule, where you divide your canvas into 3, and then you divide them again into 3, and wherever that line meets is where people will go, a point of interest. Now you can measure this out and put a cross at it, but what I was telling you before, that you can have more than one point of interest, or one focal, what they call it. Okay, so how I'm going to do this is I'm going to relax. This is a brush, and it's on an old twig outside I got, and what this does is it kind of relaxes you a little bit. So this X is about here. It's actually X and up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to start the line, and this is a focal point. And I'm going to go real dark here. And I'm going to do another focal or point of interest here. Stretch a little bit. Just get some paint on. Again, we're just trying to get loose, trying to get your mind to relax a little bit, lose control. The mind is the hardwired, so when you start to paint at the beginning, you have to push the brain to accept new knowledge. It'll take about 3 or 4 paintings before your brain will stop fighting with you. Okay. Just a wee feel here to get whereabouts your focal points are going to be. Now this is burnt umber. Just going to mix this together. Touching it a little bit to make it that bit darker, but trying to keep your brush as clean as possible. Every time you feel like your brush is getting too dark, you go back in and clean it. I take this right off the canvas. Now it's good if you got all these different shades, because it does give you a little bit of interest. Don't worry about any shape that you make, you can't go wrong. Not at this point anyway. Best to go outside and then work your way in and save your brush getting. I'm going to bring this way. The last paint I did, I went out the canvas. I'm going to bring it up here, bring people's eyes back into the painting. Now I'm going to block this here so it doesn't go out. Again, I tell you, when people look at paintings, read it like a book. So actually I will change this bit here because the people could go right out there right away. But if you keep following your eye and you get to here, bring it back in. See? Wee tricks. This is the ochre again. I'm going to make it a little bit stronger. Bring it out. Now you can blend it with your fingers if you want it to blend in a little bit better. I'm going to blend it in a little bit more here. This might be kind of hard for you to see because of the lightness of the colour. This is all texture. I know it's very hard for the camera to pick this up. And it's starting to look nice for the texture. I'm going to put the cadmium yellow in, just crisscrossing it places. Just trying to build up layers here. Now you can change any of this at any point. If you don't like the yellow, put more brown back in. Keep stepping back to see how it's looking from a distance. I'm going to put some yellow here to brighten this up a little bit. This brush has got a little bit of white on it. And it makes a kind of lemon yellow. If you're having trouble blending two colours, sometimes you put a bit of white in between it. It will blend better for colour. You can use your finger tools to blend it in. The white will blend in with the yellow and blend in with the white, because white can be a transition between two colours. I'm going to stay away from the white because I want to put that in at the end. Now this one's now mixed ochre with lemon, yellow, cadmium. I'm just scrubbing it in right now. You don't have to scrub it in more when it's got this texture in it. You want to get the underneath texture to get paint on it. So you step back, see if that looks any good. Let's get over here a little bit. Usually when I paint, I dance around the canvas, especially with acrylic paint, because you have to try and keep the balance going around. So if you finish all this and then you go on to that, sometimes you have to come back anyway, so you might as well just dance around and have some fun. I'm going to put some more dark ochre here. I'm going to get some more yellow, blend it in a little bit. A bit of white in this, take away that strong yellow. And when it dries, it will get darker. At this point you can leave the underneath carpet squares in it. And I put some ochre in here. It turned out yellow. Let me see if I can. Take a wee bit of burnt sienna. Let's see what happens. Now you want to blend in a little bit faster, you can use paper towel. I'm just finishing up here, get paint on everything. I'm going to go ahead with the tissue and see if I can blend all that in. We get a little bit more ochre there. Just going to blend it in a little bit more with the wet paper towel. Sorry, dry paper towel. The way you're trying to do has all different colours in this canvas. Remember your sides again. You just clean your brush with whatever colour you have on it. And then when you're painting the sides, just bring it forward a little bit to make sure that that colour matches. Actually, it looks pretty ugly right now, but that's what art looks like before you finish it up. And do some lines like this, randomly. Then blend them in. Or again with a tissue might be a little bit easier, paper towel. Yeah, you do one at a time because they dry too fast. What you're trying to do here is make it kind of interesting, different shades and different textures. I'm going to go back in here, paint this over again a little bit. If I see any white lines, I'm going to get rid of them at this point. White spots, sorry. I'm going to kind of do this and see if I can get like a little tapering going on here. Get away from that strong line. Now I might bring the line back, but right now I'm going to get rid of it. Put some ultramarine blue in. Again, I was talking about the connectors. We use some squares. Brown and blue is absolutely gorgeous together. Again, this is the texture I did with the comb. I'm going to carry it, just take the advantage of the ripples in it. What I was saying earlier about abstracts, you have to take every opportunity you can if you see that somebody's going to work on an abstract. I think I've given up with this other abstract because trying to follow it's very hard. I think you've got the just idea of what I'm trying to do here. So I'm just going to go now and let my brain take over in places where it should be for the design. I'm going to darken one of the connectors. So now I've got two different colours of blue here. A little bit more interesting story to this. Let me paint a little bit thicker there. Now the bridge work will have to go in after do a whitewash on this. So we're going to leave this blank right now. end of the brush. Now when you mark it, the colour underneath comes in. You can actually see it as a texture. I can do a bigger piece here. This is a burnt sienna. Go back in here, fill in some of the spots here. This is burnt umber. The inside of the circle, the C shape, sorry. Now I'm going to do some blue circles with my finger. When you do the wrap here a little bit, so you get a bit more texture going here. And we were talking about speeds of lines. I'm going to do fast line. more white in here. So I'm doing this lost and found thing. Now you want to go under this, and then you want to come back out. So I'd like to change the thick line, thin lines. Don't keep them all the same thickness. Step back and keep looking. This is like building up layers of paint for the abstract. Now it's better to let it dry so that the paint keeps its bright colours. Come back in with this yellow and see if we can brighten this up. We've got a square round circle, which always looks beautiful. While I was away, I decided to work a little bit on it, just to see where I was going. I'm going to go over why I did certain things here. Let the canvas dry, the underlayer. I was working on the T, if you notice, and now I'm introducing different colours. So I'm going to go over these again with a second coat. This is a turquoise. I'm just making random marks here. Not worried about them being straight lines. I'm going to, at the end, fix all that up, tighten up all the lines. And it's going to take a couple of coats to make these colours stand out. Back in with the ultramarine, brighten these shapes up a little bit. Any drips, try and catch them. You don't want, you want this to stay quite clean. There we go. use your brush as a measurement. Push down, pull up. Now when you've got the texture on, sometimes you can't get a straight line because it hits the texture. I'm going to show you this design again. I'm going to put colour over it, so ultramarine blue, and then we're going to mark it. And you'll see that the ochre underneath coming out, which is a nice design feature. Back in here and bring this out a little bit more. Now when you do it, like these are from the blue family, they always match if they're all from the same family. This is burnt orange. I'm going to put it in here, brighten this up a bit. And you can always leave more of the underneath colour to show through. What we're trying to do is build up about 6 layers. And mix some yellow, a little bit white. See if we can get this yellow to stand up a little bit better. Then we've put this line behind these two, we call lost and found. Let's see if I can catch some of this texture here. Very hard to see this, but the texture does give a little bit of character to the painting. That was ochre. I'm going to change it to yellow. I'm going to fill in these white patches. So your shape was already put in, so all you're doing is adding to the main composition. And then when you come to this kind of layer, you can start putting the paint on thicker if you like that look. Like, gives it more texture. Now when you step back, you might be able to see some design that you like, that you want to pull out, or something you want to replace. I'm going to put some circles in here. Maybe one here. Now what I'm using is the masking tape. I'm going to do an inner circle. There you go, how beautiful that is. That was easy. Got one down here too. That's fine, that's enough. And I might put a little one here when I do the bridge work. Not really do too much of the white because this is all going to be a whitewash over it, so I might end up losing this. Right now it kind of looks quite ugly. This is the bit where you want to run away and don't ever look at it again. This is when you have to stick with an abstract because it hasn't got a voice yet. I think I'm going to darken some of the area here. Just a line there and then I'm just going to blend it in. Just sponging some colour in here. This is a burnt umber I'm using. This is again burnt umber. Build this design up. Put more texture into it. just using my fingers here to make little circles. Best to put the paint on the canvas before you wash off your brush. It's always better on the canvas than in the water bucket. Now you can put washes on once the layer underneath is dried. Now wash is just a watered down paint. Okay, it's starting to take shape a little bit. There's not really magic in it yet, or I say the wow factor. When you look at it, go wow. That's when you know you're finished. Okay, let that dry for a little while, and we'll come and do some whitewashing. And now that the foreground is dried, we're going to do like a whitewash here. What I did was measured, put masking tape here, because I want to see where I want to put the white. So I want to keep a little bit of the ochre here. This is the time when you want to maybe straighten up some designs. Use a ruler. You can use your watercolor, white watercolor pencil. Just measure to see if your masking tape's in the right place. I'm going to try and kind of curve it here, so I tried to curve it with the masking tape. Let's try one area there, and then we'll go on to the next ones. This is between a wash and, so the paint is not like a wash. In between a wash and a dry brush. Okay, that looks pretty good. You want to be able to see through the white paint. So just get the brush and flat like that against it and gently go over it. What you notice is the texture from underneath comes out and gives you another design. So the brush is going, if I can get it, flat, down like this. More of a dry brush technique, so you can see underneath the colour. I'm going to try and curve it, let's see it a little bit. And at this point you can put like thicker lines through it too, with another texture. I tend to make it thicker here at the edges because I carry the art around, I travel with it. Because this protects it a little bit if I accidentally bump it. And then what this does is it kind of gives you more of a framing of the picture without actually putting a frame on it. Pull it in from here too. Let's take the tape off and see how that worked. Isn't that pretty? Okay. This is a watercolor pencil. I'm going to kind of give a shape that I might like the white to go. Now you don't want the white onto this because then you'll lose the circle. I try to keep a little bit of this background colour, so I stay away from the design. This is just trying to work out what you want to leave. So we got this piece done with the whitewash. I'm going to do this section here with the watercolor pencil again. I'm going to straighten this one up a little bit. I'm going to keep a little bit of the background colour here. This watercolor pencil, when you put the whitewash on, will disappear. But this gives you an idea of what it's going to look like and what you want to keep. There you go, yeah. Now you can try and do it freelance if you want, but the masking tape's so easy to do. It gives you a sharper line when you're finished. Now you don't have to worry about putting colour in the other part of the painting. Make sure that it's well secure at the bottom where you're going to paint. You don't want any leaking. You can double check to see if you're correct. You're taping. Oops. Sometimes it's hard for the tape to stick on the paint when it's uneven with the texture. You just follow that line I drew. Okay. Just going to double check. Okay. Now it's in between a wash and a dry brush. A bit closer to the dry brush idea. Put it flat, pull it down. Flat and pull it down. Now you'll be tempted to do this, but don't, just always straight down. And don't leave brush marks, what we discussed in the video before that. It's like where chunks are taken out of painting. And then if you get these brush marks, just kind of blend them in a little bit. But it's so thin that I can actually see the layer underneath, and that's what you're trying to do. Now if you don't like it, you can go kind of rub it in a little bit. Soften it up a little bit. This is just dry paper towel. Again, I've got a tendency to go thicker at the edges, and it kind of frames the painting. Soften this up a little bit, blend it in so it looks like it's all one piece. Take the dry brush and do underneath. Do your sides now too. You got plenty of paint on there to do all the sides. Okay, I did that. Let's see how that looks. Don't leave the tape on for too long, because what happens is that the paint sticks to the tape, and then when you pull the tape off, the paint comes off. Now I did put white on thinking I was really being smart, but now I need to go back in and change it to another colour. That's the thing about abstracts, I always can fix things up. Alright, so I drew a line here, I'm going to run. Masking tape never works for me. I always lose the corners of it. There we go. Now this, I've got a little bit curve here. I'm going to try and curve the tape a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. It does, so you can see the curves happening. Okay, I'm going to do the side too, because I don't want to stop and make a line. I'm going to try and keep. If you don't like it, you can go back and do the tape over again. What I'm doing a tape for is because it's your first time doing this. This will give you a visualization of where the white will go. Okay, I quite like the looks of this. I'm just going to go ahead. Now sometimes I don't even tape it down because I've been doing these for years. But another way you can do it is use the edge of your ruler if you don't want to tape down. Now this has got the texture, so you can see when you drag the brush down, you can still see the yellow underneath. You want to be able to see what you've done before. Paint must be transparent, you can see the coat underneath. You can always go back over and add more white. I've got texture underneath, it's going that direction. And I say the paint's picking it up, which is really beautiful looking. I'm going to do this one without the tape. I want to put it on as a curve. Picking its edge up here, corner, a couple extra coats of paint, bring it up. Nothing you can do wrong with an abstract. And then you can leave actually those squares if you want, circles, keep the whole colour there. Then go back into this corner, and then with a dry brush I'm going to do the edges. Now you can go and see if you can, this is a texture line. I'm going to put some white paint on it to see if I can bring it out more. Now I'm going this way with the brush. I'm dragging it, putting it down, dragging it. That gives a nice texture. So I've got these beautiful lines here. I'm going to go back in with the white. The paint's really thick right now. Very little water in it. And then if you don't like the square shapes, you can change them into curves. Oops. Let me see, step back here, see what I've done. Dry brush again. I think I'll get a little bit closer to this. I'm going to take a wet cloth and I'm going to take some of this white off. I hope I can make it in time. I wanted to put a circle here. So this time we're going to go the opposite way. We're going to go on the outside. This was the inside of a shape. Oh, lost it. Wash it off again. Start again. Now it'll be very hard to do this if you let this dry, but what you can do is you can do this with the inner circle, but do it in the ochre and bring that back. Let it dry before you get back onto the next part of it. Now when you start putting the paint on, I just said that a couple minutes ago, try and get the texture onto it.